Hi, you're listening to Book Chat with author Vivian E. Moore.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Hello and welcome to Book Chat. I am your host, author Vivian E. Moore. Hope everyone had a great week. I hope you're having a great weekend. I hope the weather where you are is very nice and lovely. Currently, we are in the atmosphere. We have a dust storm that came upon us all the way from Africa. So the sun is shining, but the haze makes it seem like it's like 100 degrees outside. With the humidity, but it's not. It's just the dust storm that is currently moving over us. But anyway, today I have a guest. Her name is Colleen Ryan, and we want to welcome her to the show. So welcome to the show, Colleen.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. So before we get to the question and answer segment of the show, I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, let's see. I guess probably the place where I would start is when I graduated from college. I was in sales, and you know, when I look back, I think that that's a job that at some point everybody should have because you really have to put yourself out there. You learn to get comfortable with the uncomfortable because I had retail jobs in high school and college, but, you know, not the big, full-time job with big-time numbers that that you have to meet. Yes. So I spent a number of years in sales, and like I said, you got to put yourself out there, and there can be a lot of rejection, even if you do well. And I did really well. I was the number 1 sales rep in the history of the company for of all time for a big Fortune 500 company, and it was a big publishing company at the time. It was CBS College Publishing.
Oh, okay.
And it was Holt, Reinhardt and Winston and Dryden Press and Saunders College Publishing. And it was scary. You know, at first it was scary, but I got to where I loved it. And, you know, a lot of sales jobs can almost be like you're running your own business because you have a lot of autonomy. And so then from there, I was in advertising sales as an advertising executive and managing people. Okay. And then now for about 23 years, I've been in the speaking and coaching business. Oh, okay. And I love it.
Well, that's wonderful. That is wonderful. And I agree with you because, in a lot of instances, you have to sell yourself. So if you have just the basic knowledge of how to do that, it can only help you, in so many different ways. So now that we have a little bit about your background, let's talk about joy. What inspired you to write your book about joy? And tell us exactly what that is.
Okay. For me, one of the most passionate topics I think that there can be is adversity. And as you and I were talking about, Vivian, before the show, whether it's tornadoes, whether it's the coronavirus, whatever it might be, I remember you saying that's life. Yes. No matter where you live, yes. You can have certain weather conditions and you can have things happen to you. We all have disappointments and losses. And I had mentioned to you, I lived in Atlanta, and so at the time it was before my then husband and I lived in Atlanta. We were living in California because I'm from Los Angeles, and I had gone through a very difficult personal loss. I had lost a baby, and that was
sorry about that.
Devastating. Yeah. And, I don't expect everybody to understand this, but I know that for some of the people listening, and probably for you, I know they'll relate to this.
Yes.
It was 3 weeks later to the day that I had to put my 18-and-a-half-year-old cat, baby, I had to put him down. 3 weeks later to the day. So it was like within a 3-week period, I felt like I lost, 2 babies. And so like a lot of things, that was just devastating.
Yes.
Fast forward to almost a year later, and it was October, and I was at a animal shelter in Peachtree City, Georgia, a suburb of Atlanta. And I thought I would just look. I would go into the shelter and just look. And that was the start of an amazing miracle. And I can tell you more about it from there if you'd like.
Yes, please do. Please do. Because I wanted to. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I walk into the shelter, and we hadn't lived in Atlanta for very long at that point. I want to say maybe about 2 weeks. So it was October, beautiful weather, a little on the hot side, but really nice. And so I saw this puppy. I go into the shelter, and it wasn't a very big shelter. Now, keep in mind, I was coming from Los Angeles, where they have a lot of no-kill shelters. So I think that's what I thought this was. So there were a lot of dogs barking. I knew in the back of my mind I wanted at this point to get a dog. And so I was just going to start looking. So all the adult dogs, which was all there was, they were barking. And out of the blue, I came upon this puppy. And I looked at her, and she looked at me, and I'm telling you, she looked up at me with these big brown eyes, and it was this instant chemistry. And I should back up and tell you, I've never had a dog before. We'd always had cats growing up, but my dad was just a perfectionist and didn't want a dog to mess up the yard, so I didn't know anything about dogs. So I did what you're never supposed to do. I put my fingers in the cage. And she licked my fingers and looked up at me. This puppy knew how to sell herself.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't have names. So none of them had names. So I went to the woman that was working there, and I said, I love that puppy. I said, about how big do you think she's going to be? And she said, medium-sized, ma'am. And I said, okay. I said, well, now what would medium-sized be? Back then I had no clue. Right. And she said, about 40 to 50 pounds. Oh. And so I said, well, whether I adopt her or not, I said, I'm guessing you accept donations, food, all of that. And she said, yes. So I remember talking to my husband about it, and, of course, motivational speaker, now I do virtual programs, but I was flying all over the country because I've spoken in 48 states and 5 countries, and he was a pilot, and so he said, oh, come on. He said, with our schedules, no, that just wouldn't be practical. And he did know a lot about dogs, though, because he was the opposite. He'd grown up with dogs his whole life. So about 3 days later, I am at a garage sale. And as I start to walk up the very long driveway, this van pulls up, and a smiling, happy-looking mother and daughter get out, and they're holding a little puppy. And of course I had turned around, and I'm seeing this, and they stop the car, turn off the motor, and they come up, and they're there also for the garage sale, and they say, oh, by the way, we just adopted this puppy from the shelter. She only had 2 hours to live.
Oh, gosh.
And we wanted to get her out of there. And the woman, the mother, said, she said, my husband said we couldn't keep her because we've already got 5 dogs, but we could get her out, just to take her out as long as we give her to someone else. And I said, wait a minute, did you get her at the Peachtree City Pound? I mean, I knew it was her from the minute I looked at her. And they said yes. And then before I could say anything, they said, oh, would you like to hold her? And they just put her in my arms.
Aww.
And I looked down at her, and she looked up at me with these big brown eyes. And, you know, of course, she was the size of a baby. And the mom said, we've already named her Joy because she has brought us so much joy. But it gets better because I told them the story, and I said, you know, I just don't know what my husband's going to think. I mean, I have a big decision in things, but, you know, I also wanted his input because I was going to be gone a lot.
Right.
And almost before I could finish the sentence, they said, we'll pet sit her for free. We'll pet sit her for free.
Solve that problem.
Yeah, because they still wanted to see her. Okay. So I mentioned it again on the phone, and he's like, well, we can certainly talk about it. I mean, he kind of seemed open. So another friend of mine, we made the arrangement to go back and see the mom and the daughter and meet the whole family because they lived close by, and Mike was still away on a trip. So we pull up into their driveway, and they're out in the country, like on an acre. It's just beautiful. And all of a sudden, my friend who had, you know, driven me, we pull in their driveway, and she yells, oh my gosh, Colleen, it's fate. It's fate. And she's yelling it. And I said, what? What are you talking about? And she points to the car in their driveway, the Mustang that was pointed right, well, let me back up. She points right to the Mustang parked in their driveway right in front of us, and she said, look. I looked at the license plate, and in huge letters, it spelled fate.
Wow.
So then we get in. We're talking to them for a long time. If memory serves me correctly, it was Friday, October 18th. And I'll tell you why in a minute. It was Friday, October 18th. And so, you know, we're playing with her, and of course, I just love her. They've got 5 other dogs. Everything's wonderful. And then the woman said, well, to be honest with you, our son passed away a year ago, and it was so devastating. And she said, we've kept his car. That was his car, and that was his license plate because he always believed in fate. And she said, that's why we named her Joy, because we had brought her home, and she just brought us so much joy. And then I shared my situation, and we just had so much in common. So you would kind of think that that would be it. And I said, well, you know, I'll talk to Mike about it. And I said, you know, I'm really open. I said, I fell in love with her from the time I saw her. I had no idea she had 2 hours. I mean, I had no idea. But of course, this was several days after I had seen her. And so you'd think that would make up my mind. But you know how some people, they need more signs.
Right. And, just a little more persuasion.
I'm one of those people where, you know, whatever a person's religious affiliation or spiritual persuasion or none, you know, I know there's probably people out there that can relate to this, where, you know, sometimes you're really asking for a sign. So I go home and I open up this publication that I like to read, and what was the word of the day?
Joy.
Joy.
Well, that's a sign.
talked about sometimes things happen in our life, and at the time we don't understand why, but if we do what we're supposed to do, we'll find tremendous joy.
Yes.
So he completely came around to it. My now ex-husband, he met her, and I did not know this at the time, but when we adopted her, the only place that she would sit, she wanted to go everywhere with me, and it was getting cool enough I could sometimes take her in the car, and if it was in the evening, and the only place she would sit was in my lap, and I now know they're not supposed to do that, and it was like I had this baby, and so I had her for almost 16 years, and I would say she was part shepherd, maybe part Rhodesian Ridgeback, definitely I think part Whippet, because she ran so fast. So I'll tell you what, a rescue animal can just change your whole life.
I believe that because, a lot of people would rather go to the pound and, adopt a dog or a cat. And because, those animals, they need love too. They need a home too. And I think that's a good thing, especially if if you're an animal person, if you're a pet person, you like pets. Because they're good company, and they take them, sometimes to the nursing homes, to the patients who have Alzheimer's and things like that. And so they use them as therapy dogs as well. So I think that's great. I really think that's great. And so is that what inspired you to write your book?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's what it was. It was adopting Joy, of course, literally adopting her, and then it's a double entendre because, of course, adopting Joy, the emotion, and I had, in some ways, I had a very nice childhood, and in some ways, I had an extremely difficult childhood with just not having a nice dad, to put it mildly.
Okay.
And he wanted boys, and he got my sister and I instead. And I reached out to him the last 2.5 years of his life, on three different occasions. And my mom had long since passed away, about 30 years prior. And my sister and I, we had a wonderful mom. But anyway, my dad never reached out, and so I healed a lot from that. It's kind of this. I love the saying, "Go through it to grow through it."
I like that too.
And so one thing I thought about with that was, a lot of us, let's face it, all of us have different baggage, whether it's from a parent, whether it's from a teacher. Maybe somebody listening, there was another sibling that was the favorite, or, maybe they were bullied in school, whatever it is. And the thing is, we all bring our issues and our baggage into life.
Yes.
And if you read some of the stories of these rescue cats and dogs, if you read their background, they've got a lot of baggage.
Yes.
And a lot of issues. And so I love that bumper sticker that says, "Who rescued who?" Because we often think we are rescuing them, but they rescue us. And so it's kind of like the perfect pairing. It's like, well, I want to say two people, because to me they're like people, but it's like, you're really helping each other. And so, sometimes too, when you're helping to get an animal rescued, of course, you're really rescuing two, because by rescuing one, you make room for another one to come into the shelter.
Yes.
And
that's
so
a great point.
You're not just helping pets, you're helping people, because you never know what person is going to adopt an animal and have their life transformed
That's
by
very
it
true.
in some
That's very
way.
true. Well, since you said that, let's segue to this. So, how has writing this book changed the perspective of your life?
It's given me a tremendous happiness and fulfillment, because I think that if ever we go through adversity, we don't want it to be in vain. I think most of us, whatever we go through, we want to somehow use that to help other people. Take our pain and use it to propel us forward, but also to help others.
Yes.
And so what I really want to do is, more than anything, even if it's just this book helps one person, if there's anybody who's really going through depression or despair, those are the people that I want to help, to say, look, you can come out of it. Whatever you're going through, where you see no way out, you can come through it.
Yes. I think that's great. And I don't know who needs to hear that today, but I'm so glad that you said that, because it is so helpful, and in so many ways, and it inspires, and in some people it may even heal some hurt that they have, some hurt that they wasn't even aware of. But still, it touches lives in so many different ways. So I'm glad you said that, because that was just something that needed to be said. I'm just glad you did that. For whoever's listening today, I just hope that they will get something from this message and from everything that you said, because it's important. And you just touched on so many great points. With the joy. Adopting joy, that double meaning that it has, and everything else that that we discussed today. So what I want you to do is tell us, because I know when we talked a few months back, you said you had several delays, and so I want to know, have you gotten past that to the actual date when this book will be released?
Right now, the plan is December.
Okay.
December of this year, 2020, and I think in some ways one of the reasons, I really do believe. It's such a cliche to say everything happens for a reason.
No, I believe that. I definitely believe that.
It's a cliche because it's true, and I think that's another thing that I would tell people is, sometimes when there is a delay in your dream. There's a reason,
right?
And sometimes the reason is that either God or the universe or whoever that is for you, it isn't finished working with you. You're sometimes in a holding pattern.
Yes,
because there's more that you're supposed to learn and that you're supposed to go through.
Yes, so
that you can help other people. And so there are some other things that I've gone through this year with this pandemic, where all of my motivational speaking has come to an end. Wow. And I've had to learn to be a techie and do virtual programs. And so, most people might laugh when I say this, but when I was new to Instagram, and if you wouldn't mind if I could give my Instagram handle, I don't know, maybe Twitter handle.
Twitter.
Twitter, sure. I know that, for me, even social media, and that's a very minor thing, but there were some things that I had to learn. Yes. So that's another thing that I think that I would say of I think the book was partially delayed because I had to go through more so that I can teach more. And I think sometimes too, we go through certain things to make us more compassionate, right, to what other people are going through, so that we can be more empathetic.
Well, I always said that, trials weren't designed to weaken you. They were designed to make you stronger. And a lot of times when we face trials, there is still triumph, And so I applaud you for learning a new way to do what you love to do. And it's good to learn new things because you never know in the long run how that will benefit you. To learn how to be tech savvy, because that's not everybody's, trait, but we're teachable. So we can learn how to do things that we never imagined, we might have to do or could do. So that's a wonderful thing. So, in writing your book, would you change anything?
I don't think I would. I'm really grateful now for the delays. Mm-hmm. And I know there's probably somebody that also needs to hear this. Mm-hmm. And that is that we want to have control of things. We want to be in charge and we want to have control, and there's a lot to be said for taking action. Mm-hmm. But sometimes delay is just inevitable. Sometimes the delay in your dream is inevitable. And so hindsight's 20/20. It's easy, Vivian, isn't it?
Yeah.
To look back and say,
it is.
Oh, now I know why that happened.
Right.
Or, oh, I'm so glad that didn't happen.
Well, sometimes dreams deferred is not the end. It's just like you said, it's a wait and see. It's like it's not ready yet. So that means, we need to wait just a little bit longer, because sometimes when you wait, some of the best things in life happen. When you wait on it. So
that's so true. And as you said that, I thought of a rose. You can't force a rose to bloom too soon. And I love what you said about in going through trials, there is triumph.
Yes. But you have to wait it out. You have to stay the course so you can get to the other end. I say that all the time. You may have a set destination plan, but along the way, there will be trials and tribulations. But if you can just press on and hold on just a little while longer, you will get to the end. And Colleen, I thank you so much for coming on the show today. For talking about, adopting pets and adopting joy for you, and for having this friend in your life for so many years. And I know that it's hard, when you've taken something to heart and, you've loved it as if it were your child. And, when things happen, it's hard to get over it. But I'm so glad that you found a way to even express that pain, but at the same time, you're expressing joy and writing about it. So I think that's very encouraging, and everybody needs to read it. So I can't wait for this book to come out in December. Do you have any other projects lined up that you're working on?
That's pretty much it.
Okay.
For right now, I was doing a podcast for a while.
Oh, that's great.
Of course, the title, Adopting Joy, and I would love to go back to doing the podcast when when all of this is over, and I would love to have you on my podcast.
Thank you.
I'm so honored that you had me on, Vivian, and your wisdom. I've loved what you've had to say, because I think we all learn from each other.
Yes, we do. We do. When we take the time to listen, we can learn something, because like I said, we're all teachable, and we don't know everything. So, we should always be open to learning from others. And I've learned quite a bit from you today as well. So, and I thank you for accepting the invitation to come on the show. And even though it's been a long time, in the makings, but we finally made it happen. So I'm glad that I got the opportunity to talk with you, to chat with you, and I would be honored to be a guest on your show. You just tell me when, and I would most definitely, put that on my schedule so I can be able to do that. And I just want to thank you for being so patient and for coming on today and sharing your story with the listeners. And it's been a joy. It's been an absolute joy
to
have you.
Thank you, Vivian.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
All right. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
All right, folks. So was Colleen Ryan. Again, I'm so thankful that she was able to do the show today and invited me to do her show. So I'm looking forward to that. Definitely looking forward to that. But before I let you go, I want to make sure that I give you these URLs so you can continue to listen to Book Chat and, share this information with other listeners, because I definitely appreciate it. And I want to reach that goal of 10,000 downloads by July if possible. But anyway, the first URL is, of course, Spreaker, and it is https://www.spreaker.com/user/author Vivian E. Moore. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. My handle is God's Property 51 on Instagram and God's Property 46 on Twitter. You can also just look up Vivian E. Moore on Facebook, and you will be able to find me there. Also, if you read my blog, that is at https://vivianemore.blogspot.com. And if you missed today's live show, don't despair, because it is recorded. So that means that you can listen to it at your leisure. Of course, you can listen to it on Spreaker, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Castbox, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, YouTube, and SoundCloud. And tomorrow is Worship Day. I have to share that with you every single Saturday and tell you, not necessarily tell you, but just suggest that you invite family members and friends and neighbors to join in on those discussions as well, because we all need to hear a good word, and it strengthens us, for whatever may lay ahead, because we just never know. And also let children listen to those messages that are being broadcast, whether if it's by telephone or over the a broadcast that's on the internet, or however you are listening to or worshiping these days due to the pandemic that has hit so hard. So I know a lot of churches are still not opening for that reason, and it's probably best they don't, because you just never know. It's better if you can find an alternative to listen to the word. Please do that. And also tell someone that you love them, because tomorrow is not promised. Today may be the only chance you get to say that. So I love you. I hope you love me back. Until the next time you hear my voice, God bless you and goodbye.
Loved what you've heard on this week's episode? Well, the answer is simple. It would mean the world to us if you could head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review and feedback. Spreading the word really is the best way to grow our podcast and achieve even greater things. Thank you.